ਸੋ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਾਜ਼ੇਬ ਨਾਲ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਸਟਰ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੇਟਰ ਹਨ ਵਰਚੂਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਨਾਲ। ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਮਹੱਤਵਪੂਰਨ ਵਿਸ਼ੇ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਕਪਲਸ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਇੱਕ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਆਪਣੀ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹ ਸੈਕਸ਼ੂਅਲ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ, ਇੰਟੀਮੇਟ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂਟਲੀ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਾਈ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ। ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਇਹੀ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਟੁੱਟ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮਸ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਧ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਚੈਲੰਜਸ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਧਦੇ ਨੇ। ਇਸੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਓ ਮੁੜ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਣੇ ਅੱਜ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਾਜ਼ੇਬ ਤੋਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Harpreet.
Thank you. When we talk about communication, and I was reading somewhere that the major cause of rift between couples is a lack of communication. When there's lack of communication, then mistrust develops, and when mistrust develops, then there are lots of things which happen, and many times couples fall apart also. So if you could take us on this journey today, whereby the importance of communication amongst couples is required, what all needs to be done, and if with examples you can come and let us know, that we really appreciate it.
Sure. Yes, so we'll talk about communication, but as usual, I'm going to put it into the context of the virtues.
Right.
So one of the main strategies of the Virtues Project is speaking the language of virtues and using teachable moments. So always having in mind that we have these qualities in us that we can bring to bear in our relationships. And it can, in fact, change something that is difficult and dark and troublesome. It can actually turn things around. So, for example, if a couple is bringing to their consciousness that they really want to strive to use courtesy and respect in their dealings, right? The key thing, Harpreet, is that we bring these qualities to our consciousness and we really strive to bring them about in our communication. As you know, the way we speak to one another and what we say to one another is very powerful. Language has the power to uplift us, and it also has the power to really hurt one another. So we need to be, very aware that what we're saying, has a huge impact on our relationships. So we start with that awareness.
So whatever comes out of the lips has to be monitored.
That's right.
And because that's going to either elevate you or kind of degenerate you.
That's right. Yes, exactly. So I can give some examples of when we might be not communicating very well. And I want to acknowledge that this is not easy.
Oh, yeah.
We have emotions and we have things that trigger us and it's not an easy road, but I really believe that with practice, developing new skills, couples can really develop their capacity to communicate well, and it can really make a difference in their relationship. So I just want to give that message of hope that we can really make progress in this area. So some signs that we might be in trouble is that we're very emotional when we speak and we're talking out of that emotion. So my suggestion is if the emotions are very high, to take time out. That's not the time to really have a productive dialogue. So you might need to actually say, I need to come back to this, and take time to cool down, to kind of get yourself together before you have a productive conversation. So that can be one thing. Elevating our volume, increasing our tone and having sort of a harsh tone with one another, that's a signal or a sign to us that, we're off track. It's not going to help. The other person receiving that, or both parties, are going to be defending themselves and not very much open to listening.
Everybody tries to justify oneself.
Yes. Yeah. So, so many people find themselves in this circumstance, and it's really about practicing some self-discipline, and first and foremost, a desire to want to strive to change it. I'll just add in a little piece here that I really believe with couples today that one of the key qualities for individuals to have in order to improve their relationships is simply a willingness for their own personal growth. If they're not willing to take a look at themselves or what they might be doing that's a mistake, it's very difficult to move forward. There has to be that openness to say, okay, I'm wrong here, or I made a mistake, or I
Right.
have this pattern that's really not helping. So I'm going to look for ways to help myself to make this better.
That's a very important point what you have
Yeah.
touched, willingness, because openness, first of all, your ego has to be taken to the background.
It does.
If you are wanting to, bring about that trust, bring about that assimilation of thoughts, then of course your own ego has to go to the background. Otherwise, most of the times, the major cause of rift is that I want to justify myself, I am right.
Yes.
And in spite of the fact I might be knowing I'm not right, but just to pretend and to show and to prove your authority that yes,
Yes.
I am right. It may be from the female side or from the male side, and that's the major cause of friction.
Yes, I agree that there's this domination, as you talk
Right.
about, because it's kind of an oppression of the other person, and that person is going to react against that. So really, again, it comes back to what is the spirit
Right.
with which we're approaching one another. That really has to be the foundation, and then our communication will come out of that.
Right.
So the point that you made, that's another example I was going to give, is that being very attached to your point of view
Right.
and not open to the other person's point of view, or insisting on getting your point across and not really being open to hearing
Right.
the others. So again, that's a quality that we need to have, is really a respect for each other's point of view. We might not agree with one another, but we really do need to show that respect for the other person's opinion.
Right.
And then, hopefully come to, if you're disagreeing, come to some middle ground or compromise. Sometimes we have to defer one way, sometimes we might have to defer the other way.
Right.
But as long as there's not a consistent sort of dominating attitude,
Right. Again, the dominating attitude, what you're talking about, it's all across the world. What
It
we
is.
find out is that males generally, they want to dominate. They want their thought to prevail. And irrespective of the fact, these days women are also earning, the man is also earning. So over the years, what do you find in your course of interaction with the couples where you do your
Yes.
seminars and interact with the public?
Yes.
So is this a major bone of contention now? Because earlier there was a talk of adjustment. The
Yes.
women used to adjust because the male was the main bread earner of the family.
Yes.
But now that the women is also earning, so is that also a strong point of friction which says that if you are just saying your way, then let it be your way or highway kind of approach which people adopt. Is this a major factor?
Well, it is, and this is. I'm in the middle of a couples group that I'm facilitating right now, and this issue comes up when the men and the women share that it is an issue that we're in this midst of changing roles,
Right.
and neither the men nor the women really, we haven't really adjusted ourselves or have known how to deal with the newfound power
Right.
that women have as breadwinners. In Canadian culture, if we look at Canadian culture, there was a time during the wars where the women went into the workforce,
Right.
and then when the men came back from war, the women went back into the home.
Right.
And then with all the political changes that were happening and everything, and then, if you look at anywhere around the world, there is this changing
Right.
attitude around men and women and the whole issue of equality
Right.
that we are adjusting ourselves to. And it is an issue. And the couples that I work with, we talk about it openly and frankly, and, just trying to say, yes, we're all going through this.
Right.
And none of us have really figured it out yet.
Adjustment is a major point.
Yes.
But again, while we might talk about adjustment, but when it comes to practical issues, many a times your mind doesn't allow you to, talk on those grounds of adjustment, though there might be some lip service.
Right.
So when it comes to adjustment, and again, you have given some good points whereby you're talking about when the emotions are high, or you're angry, or you're talking in a harsher tone, don't try to stress your point, give some time,
Right.
take a sigh, go out for a walk, come out, and then again try to sit down and talk about that, because there's always a solution.
Yes.
Through dialogue, you can solve everything.
Yes.
But because at that time, when in a fit of anger or when your emotions are too high,
Yes.
these things go to the background. And here comes the point about your virtues project,
Yes.
that if your roots are strong, if your foothold is strong, then probably at that time you'll be able to put those virtues into perspective, and they might not rather I would say might, but rather they will definitely help you out, and you will be able to have a better sense of what's going around.
Well, and I think that's why this Virtues Project has been so readily embraced by people all around the world,
Right.
Harpreet, because it really gets to the core of who we are, and it does address social issues
Right.
on a very fundamental level. It shows us that, I mean, these are not new concepts.
Oh, yeah.
These concepts are in
Existed.
all the faith traditions,
Right.
and there's many communities and organizations that are out there promoting these values or these concepts,
Right.
wanting to make our society a better place. And this project is a beautiful resource to
Absolutely.
help support in that effort
Right.
to really improve our relationships, to raise children that are, ethically and morally sound, to bring ethics into the workplace, to create more peaceful homes.
Absolutely.
That's really
So-
what it is.
So that's what it is. Peaceful homes and
Yes.
better relationships. That's what life is all about.
Yes.
We'll continue with the discussion after this break as to what more can be incorporated into your daily life so that couples can lead a successful and blissful life. We'll talk
Thank
about
you.
this. So ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਜ਼ੇਬ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਟਕਰਾਰ ਦੇ ਮੁੱਖ ਕਾਰਨ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਇਮੋਸ਼ਨਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਬੜੇ ਹਾਈ ਹੋਏ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਗੁੱਸੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਟੋਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਬੋਲਣ ਦਾ ਸਟਾਈਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਖੜੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਬਿਹਤਰੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜੇਕਰ ਕਦੀ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੋਏ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਬੈਕਡ੍ਰੌਪ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਕੁਝ ਸਮਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਓ ਘਰੋਂ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਓ ਜਾਂ ਇਕਾਂਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਓ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਗੁੱਸੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਾਰਤਾਲਾਪ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਡਾਇਲੌਗ ਠੀਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਰਾਮ ਨਾਲ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਸਮੱਸਿਆ ਦਾ ਹੱਲ ਲੱਭਣਾ ਚਾਹੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਹੋ ਸਕੇਗਾ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਸੋ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਜ਼ੇਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਮਾਸਟਰ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੇਟਰ ਹਨ ਵਰਚੂਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਹਸਬੈਂਡ ਅਤੇ ਵਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਬੈਟਰ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਟਰੈਂਥਨ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਨਾਲ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੱਲ ਲੱਭਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਆਓ ਹੋਰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ So before the break, when you talked about creating better homes, peaceful relationships, and communication plays a very important role, as you have highlighted.
Yes.
Now, in this, again, the points what you have raised about there should be a desire and openness to talk about issues. Many a times that ego stops you from going forward, and that is the point, as you were saying, that if you are strengthened in your virtues are stronger than your egos, then definitely you can solve the issues.
Yes.
But you have to work on this. It's not an easy affair. It's easy to say, but when it comes on you, then definitely everybody wants to justify oneself.
Yes.
Now, overall, in your experience, what would be your recommendation over here that how to be strengthened with those virtues, whereby if you are engulfed in such kind of a situation, you bring those virtues back into your life and then through communication try to solve the issues?
Well, Harpreet, I was reflecting on this as I was coming here, and the founder of the Virtues Project, Linda Kavlin-Popov, she has an expression that we have a hole in the moral ozone of our world.
Right.
So there's many issues, and we're all dealing with balancing, those two parts of ourselves, that
Right.
lower nature and that higher nature. So your question, I guess how I would answer that is anything that will support and strengthen our higher nature, which I think is where our virtues lie.
Right.
And our opposites are part of our lower nature, whether that's anger or ego or fear or, a lack of courage, we can all think of ways to strengthen that capacity, whether it's prayer and meditation, whether it's learning new things,
Right.
whether it's, health and well-being, anything that falls under that category, stress reduction, anything that's going to take care
Right.
of ourselves so that we can act out of that best part of us.
Right.
I mean, there's many things that we can do, and I just want to acknowledge that most people are struggling with one thing or another, and it's to say, what's really the issue that I need to tackle in my
Absolutely.
life.
There's not just a one solution answer
No,
to everything. It all depends upon your circumstances and your upbringing, what your environment is, what kind of thinking you have, what kind of thoughts are prevalent in your mind. And that all, when combined, can lead to, but these are just the roads which you, if any of these you adopt, definitely there'll be some betterment in your relationship.
Yes.
sex is a major binder in any relationships between husband and wife.
Yes.
And here also we find that this also becomes a major crisis many a times. The glorification of sex on the media, what we are finding these days. And when this is being brought into the bedrooms, and that also creates some tensions. Let us know a little bit about this. How can this factor be an important factor of better relationships?
Right. Well, this is something we've touched on before in previous shows, and it's an area of particular interest to me because of the degradation that we see in our culture, kind of across the board. We have social influences that are really impacting both men and women,
right,
and our young people. I think a lot of parents, most parents these days, I think, speaking as a parent and speaking to a parent, and I know there's many parents in your audience, we're very concerned about what our youth and what our children are exposed to.
right.
So, so I think we need to recognize that this is a subject that we need to have dialogue around.
Right.
And I'll just share a couple of thoughts and ideas with you that, you know, the purpose of sex is twofold. It's procreation, and it's to bond a couple into a couple, so that they can enhance their spiritual natures.
Right.
And many ideas that are out there accept that the culture's view is normal.
Right.
You know, like what's around us, all this media, that it's kind of a materialistic point of view first, and in many cases, it's a type of sex that's degrading to the people that are involved.
Right.
And as long as we accept the cultural view, we will encourage people to continue in activities that are harmful to their spiritual nature.
Right.
I really believe that. So we need to recognize that there are these moral and spiritual dangers out there, and we need to, again, increase our consciousness, our awareness around, you know, what's healthy and what's not, and ask ourselves personally and in our relationships, you know, what's healthy and what's not. And I think if couples, and again, this is a subject that's very difficult for people to talk about.
Right.
There's a lot of shame, doesn't matter where you come from in the world.
Right.
And that can be a barrier for having dialogue and some honest communication about what's going on. So I think the work that I do is to encourage people to begin with a vision about what is healthy, where would they like to go, what would they like to see in their relationship, because it's an important part of their relationship, and it needs to be something that supports and enhances their life together.
Right.
And studies show and statistics show that, like as you said, it can be a major wedge between couples if things aren't if they're not connecting well in that way.
That's right. There's a very famous book which talks about what you are also talking. Men are from Venus, women are from Mars.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Excuse me. So in this particular book also, I was just finding out that research proves that the urge for sex is more prevalent amongst the males as compared to the women, and that's also a major bone of contention, whereby when the sexual desire is not being fulfilled, and there the communication is not strong, and that leads to tensions, and then many a times it leads to rift also, and couples become apart also. So if you could give some viewpoint on this particular issue as to how can communication play a dominant role in this particular issue?
Well, everyone has a sex impulse, and studies perhaps show that men's is stronger. However, we all have a responsibility to manage our impulse.
Right.
And from the point, and this is my point of view, that it's important for both the man and the woman to have this be something that is enhancing their life.
Right.
You know, it's just not for the man's enjoyment. It's something that the couple should feel bonded by and closer to one another as a result.
Right.
So if one person is shut down, now I saw on a show many years ago that they talked about an epidemic in the North American culture of women being shut down sexually. And I believe it's because the attitude and the media and all the messages that women are receiving today do not support our dignity, our integrity, and so we're shutting down on some level.
Right.
And so I think if one person in the relationship is shut down, there's probably a reason for that. And if I was working with a couple, I would look into what is going on.
Right.
And how have you both been impacted by the culture? You know, what can be done to improve the safety, which we've talked about, I think, before, and improve, because there has to be safety, emotional safety for the physical connection to be strong.
During these kind of crises, when communication is not strong between couples, what role can counselors play, and people like you who advise them?
Yeah.
What are the results? What talk about such kind of talks with others? Can that help out?
And again, I know it's a very personal, private subject matter, but there are many therapists out there, and couples therapists will obviously be able to touch on this. But however, I do caution to make sure that there's a good match between the couple and the therapist, because some therapists are trained to promote more of what's in the culture. And so we don't necessarily want that. We want a therapist who's going to support the couple to feel safer and more intimate. And it may be, you know, adjusting themselves to something that maybe they've never had before to begin with.
And then make them aligned with their roots, basically, that foundation of what we have been talking about, those virtues, which are the foundation stone. Because what has happened is that the foundation is strong, but we have been just covering up with muck, and that foundation cannot be seen today. So if we just revive our roots and reach it, and then definitely that relationship can become strong. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for this
so much,
perspective.
Harpreet.
Thank you. सो आज जो कैली मॉन्गेजेब ने गलबात की थी कि कपल्स विचकार ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਅਹਿਮ ਰੋਲ ਨਿਭਾ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਸੈਕਸ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਪਲਸਿਸ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਪ੍ਰੂਵ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮਰਦ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚਾਹਵਾਨ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਸੈਕਸ ਦੇ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਮਤਲਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਗਲੋਰੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਵੇ ਸੈਕਸ ਦੀ ਸੈਕਸ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੈ ਪਲੇਜ਼ਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੰਜੋਇਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਬੌਂਡਿੰਗ ਹੋਵੇ ਹਸਬੈਂਡ ਅਤੇ ਵਾਈਫ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਇਹ ਤਦ ਹੀ ਪੋਸੀਬਲ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਜੇਕਰ ਚੰਗੀ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ ਆਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਸੀ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕੁਝ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਰੇ ਆਫ ਹੋਪ ਲੱਭੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਕਪਲਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਮਸਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਗੰਭੀਰਤਾ ਦਾ ਵਿਸ਼ਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਮਾਜ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੇ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਸ਼ੇਮ ਗਿਲਟ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕੈਲੀ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਫਿਰਦੇ ਆ ਜਿਸ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਉਲਝਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਲਈ 604 603 7555 ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਈਮੇਲ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ harpreetsingh@gmail.com ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਤੁਸੀਂ youtube.com/harpreetsingh ਤੇ ਵੀ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਆਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਦਿਓਗੇ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੇਕਰ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰੋ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਐਡਵਰਟਾਈਜ਼ਮੈਂਟ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰੋ ਫਿਰ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤਦ ਤੱਕ ਬਾਏ